Takes you on a chapter by chapter, verse by verse study of God's letter to you, the Bible. And now here is Pastor Arnold Murray.
Good day to you. God bless you. Say, welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel. Welcome to this family Bible study hour. Hey, we're ready to get back into our Father's Word, the book of Proverbs. And we finished that 24th chapter. We're going to start the 25th chapter. And remember, you had the introduction into the wise men of Hezekiah, and they're gathering the remainder of the Proverbs of Solomon. Wisdom is a wonderful thing, and I hope you're enjoying these Proverbs. So, with a word of wisdom from our Father, no more need be said. These rules of life telling you how to be successful in life. And this particular chapter encourages the reverence of our Father Yahweh. It encourages you to love Him, to respect Him, and naturally to trust Him. Okay, and in verse 1, and it reads, "These are the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied out." Now, many of you remember I said there is a footnote in your companion Bible that might be interesting for you on this first verse in the parallel column. Verse 2, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." That is to say, it is for a king to search out the matter before he makes a decree or a decision. But it is God's right to conceal whatever He chooses, inasmuch as He was the creator of all things. And but for a king, the wisdom is to make the correct decision by searching out true facts and using common sense. Verse 3, "The heaven of height and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable." Now, there are three things given there, and you must understand them. That how high is heaven? Do you know? Do you know anyone that knows? Or how deep is the earth? Then how could you possibly search out the mind of a common king? That is to say, a human being that has a kingship. You could never tell what his mind was thinking necessarily, but do you know something? Our Father can. He who has the right to conceal whatever He so chooses. He knows what the king is thinking. So it would do you well, though you can discern people many times. That's a good point to remember. Until you cannot get inside a person's head, God can. You know what? He knows what you're thinking right now. Verse 4, "Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer." Verse 5 is connected with this. Let's continue on. Verse 5, "Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness." In other words, let's take the analogy that he utilizes with the silver. The dross is the slag or the dirt, the corruption that is left in silver when it is mined. And when the fire hits it, usually the silver runs to the lower part, it's according to what type smelter it is, of course, and the dross slings to the outside, and you have the pure silver right in the center. And what it's saying is, as this makes that precious silver that is good to be gold-plated or something to make precious vessels, so is a king that gets all the wickedness as dross out of his cabinet or out of his judges. Because anytime you have a wicked judge, you got problems, friend. I mean, a wicked judge is not wicked as one, but all his decisions most likely will be wicked also. And it will cause much consternation or trouble upon the king himself and hurt to the people. So I enjoy it when I see, even in the New Testament, many times your works will be tested as by fire, and some will be as gold, silver, brass, wood and hay. Wood and hay, when tested by fire, don't amount to much. Okay? So a king established in righteousness cleanses all the wickedness from his counselors and staff. Verse 6. Put not forth thyself in the presence of the king, and stand not in the place of great men. In other words, if you're in front of the king, don't swagger. Don't make something out of yourself that you're not. Don't put on airs. Be very straightforward. For a king's sentence can have your life even. Don't swagger. 7, continuing, connecting. For better it is that it be said unto thee, come up hither, than that thou shouldest be put lower in the presence of the prince whom thine eyes have seen. Now, Jesus himself utilized this very proverb, and so it is. Instead of swaggering and taking a high seat, always take the low seat humbly, but with wisdom. You will be elevated to the proper seat that you're deserving of. That's God's way. That can be taken spiritually, literally, and or otherwise. That is it is human nature, and it is a spiritual nature as well. It works in both senses. Always let your wisdom be the reason you are elevated, and not your own opinion of yourself. All right, verse 8. Go not forth hastily to strive, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof, when thy neighbor hath put thee to shame. In other words, think things through. Don't just hastily run into something or do something when, and obviously it's the neighbor in this case that you have aught at. So don't just rush into it, because when you haste makes waste. Remember that old saying? Well, it's true. And when you rush into something, you want to make certain that you have all the facts and kind of document in your own mind what kind of proof does the neighbor have, okay? That he might spring on you, that might even prove you're making a false accusation. Therefore, deliberate, take your time, and be sure of your case if you're going to debate. Verse 9. Debate thy cause with thy neighbor himself, and discover not a secret to another. And this is a neighbor that you might have a little squabble with, and it's important. Keep it to yourself, okay? Now, I'm not talking about something of a serious matter. This is maybe perhaps a personal thing with a neighbor. If you know an embarrassing thing that he is doing, or is embarrassing to your family or whatever, and you approach that neighbor, keep it to yourself, that the discussion or the debate that you have, because if you release it, then it will always, by the time it makes the rounds, be totally blown out of pocket, all right? Then connecting, verse 10, lest he that heareth it, that's to say someone hears gossip or whatever, put thee to shame, and thine infamy turn not away. In other words, you want to be very careful in a situation like that, because sometimes, I guess we would call it in this particular age, sometimes people talk too much when they should have been listening or taking their time very slowly and acting to know you're going to win, okay? Verse 11. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. And actually, this word fitly means, the Hebrew word means that it is timely, and also that it flows smoothly, as any teacher must do. The subject must flow and be connected, or people are not going to understand this subject, the object, or whatever's being discussed. So, fitly word here, the Hebrew word, again, means to be timely and flowing. That is to say, it connects. That means it also connects in the minds of people. True wisdom is to take that is complicated and simplify it, timely, and connect, and whereby it flows, and so that it is easily understood to anyone's ear. That being the wisdom of it. And he compares it to one of these most beautiful golden pictures of silver, artworks of the time. That's what good words, timely spoken, that flow, are as precious as, or as beautiful as. Verse 12. As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine silver, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. A wise reprover, the Hebrew word means to be right. In other words, if you're going to be a preacher, teacher, always be right, especially if you're speaking to an obedient ear. That means someone that gives you their attention for the purpose of being taught. Always know you're right to the very best of your ability. Go into, if the subject happens to be biblical, if you intend to teach at any length, get into the languages so that you know of a certainty that you are on the right track and that you are teaching and bringing forth the flow in a timely method whereby it even upgrades or improves the quality of life of that obedient hearer. You see, that's quite a responsibility perhaps on a teacher, and I do not say that to cause someone that is maybe undecided as to whether they should teach or whatever. Planting seeds is a form of teaching. The Hebrew word reprover simply means to be right. Always make sure you are. If you do your homework to your satisfaction and pray about it with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, you'll do well. Verse 13. As the cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refresheth the soul of his masters. Now, I'll use this as a teaching method here. What does this mean? As the cold of snow in the time of harvest. Think about that a second. Something's wrong with it. It doesn't snow at harvest time. That would be a calamity. That means it would be wintertime at harvest time. And wintertime certainly is not harvest time. So what it really is referring to is snow was brought from the peaks of Lebanon and taken to the fields of harvest. They were having an ice cold drink, okay? That ice cold drink was very refreshing at harvest time because harvest is a very hard work. And yes, they had an ice drink even then, but they used it from the mountains, hauled it from the mountains. And what it's saying is, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him, for he refresheth the soul of his masters. As a cold, icy drink at harvest time, that's hot, refreshes the drinker thereof, so then the soul is refreshed by those that send a faithful messenger. You know, most people that have been in business for any period of time would prefer loyalty over efficiency. You can find some people that are very efficient, but they're not loyal. They're not a faithful worker. And I know I, for one, would much prefer a loyal worker than someone that was absolutely gifted to the highest degree and not faithful. Because anytime you have an organization that you cannot know of a certainty that it's going to be where you want it to at what given time, take the slower pace and get it done rather than to be disappointed and have waste in the organization. That's basically what it's talking about. Make sure that those you send as messengers are faithful, that they carry the true message. You might say here, our Father also sends messengers, and he mentioned them as reprovers, because you can call a reprover, as it's mentioned in verse 12, a preacher. Okay? And our Father, when he has one faithful, then it's certainly refreshing to him, and certainly refreshes the soul of he that sent him. Verse 14, Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift, now listen to this carefully. Whoso boasteth himself of a false gift is like clouds and wind without rain. Now, I want you to picture, what do clouds and wind together? Usually, if they're gathered right and the heat's right, here comes rain. It looks like rain. It's like it's going to water the crop and we're going to be successful. Well, a false prophet is like one that it looks good, sounds good, but all he is a big bag of wind and all fluffed up like a cloud, but he never produces. Now, you got a lot of people that claim to have gifts in this generation. And there's a lot of wind, all right, blowing around on people and things of this nature, and culling out the truly people that are in need of an honest man's prayer that has the true gift for a show business. Now, I'm not judging people, but you know and I know that it is God's truth, and as God sits on the throne, as God is wherever God chooses to be, he's also in their camp, and he's keeping score. So he doesn't like people that boast of a false gift. Boast they have, let's say, a gift of healing, but they made it up themselves. God does all healing when it's asked in the Son's name, if there is a reason for it that furthers the kingdom of God. Example, one man was healed at the pool of troubled waters that day. There were over 100 there, but Jesus chose to only heal one, not the rest. Verse 15, that meaning that healings always bear a purpose, all right? 15, by long forbearing, that means by having lots of patience, is a prince persuaded? Is he won over? A judge is won over. And a soft tongue breaketh the bone. In other words, wisdom spoken with a soft tongue, forbearing or using patience, and sticking with the truth can break bones, meaning it can bring down a foe or an enemy of much weight. Just a soft voice. Remember Elijah, and remember the still soft voice that accomplished more than all the storms and earthquakes and so forth. Verse 16, hast thou found honey? Eat so much as is sufficient for thee. In other words, you take what is common sense and do it in moderation, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit it. You lose all of it. What's this talking about? It's talking about self-control in agreeable things. There are some things that are very agreeable to you. They taste good. They look good. They feel good. But always practice self-control and moderation. It's God's way. Otherwise, if you regurgitate, you lose even that first part that you enjoyed up to the point where you had sufficient. Verse 17. Withdraw thy foot from thy neighbor's house, lest he be weary of thee, and so hate thee. What it's saying here is let your visits be rare, or the Hebrew is very seldom do you go to your neighbor's house, lest he hate you. You don't want to get in the way or overstay your welcome anywhere. Again, even visiting with a neighbor is a very agreeable thing in some cases. In some cases, there are exceptions to every rule, but don't overstay it. Many times, let's say that two men might enjoy visiting with each other very much, but look at the neighbor's wife and she wants you out of her hair in a bad way. That means you're punching borrowed time. If you expect to have real friendship as families, and there's one thing about families, it can't be a one-on-one friendship. It's got to be family friendships. So you have to, as a mature being, see that all of the family enjoys as best you can. So again, what is that practicing? Self-control in agreeable things. That's God's wisdom to you in this chapter that leads to the reverence of God, telling you how and encouraging you to do that, to ask His blessings. Pray for your neighbors. There's nothing as valuable as a good neighbor when you're away that catches someone that might be damaging your property. Good neighbors are fantastic and wonderful friends to have. Verse 18, a man that beareth false witness against his neighbor is a maul and a sword and a sharp arrow. A man that will bear false witness against his neighbor is a destroyer, is a damager. He's going to damage your property. He's going to damage your heart. He's going to damage your mind because you're going to lose sleep over what dastardly acts can be accomplished by careless people or people that simply don't care what they throw off on their neighbor. And it's like in the country we have septic fields. That's drain fields from the commodes in a house. They just soon drain them over on their neighbor rather than having them on their own property and kind of flush it all down on him and could care less. That's not the type of person that makes a good neighbor. And a neighbor can be that bears false witness, that is to say lies, will do you damage. So beware the false witness. Well, what do I do in that case? Well, you've already been instructed in this book of Proverbs how to handle a false witness. Nip it in the bud, okay? Nip it in the bud. And let the community see that he is a false witness. Got it? Okay, therefore, then he is no destroyer to you. Verse 19. Confidence in an unfaithful man, don't read over that. Confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble, that's when you really need him and you're really counting on him, is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. In other words, an unfaithful person is a real pain in the foot, okay? That's exactly what it means, because what it means is that with a toothache or with your foot out of business, you're helpless. So confidence in an unfaithful person when you're in a time of trouble, that's when he's going to let you down. So be careful of who you place in positions or trust to be in a position as a backup if something goes wrong, if they're unfaithful. I know that it seems that probably God is telling us to cull a little thick and only keep the best. Yeah, if you're wise, that's what you do. That is to say, if you put him in a position whereby he can help you in time of trouble, that means he's got to be pretty sharp. Now, well, what should we do with the unfaithful people? What do you do with the pain in the foot? You get rid of it. If you've got some old cow that you just bought at the sale barn and she jumped this fence, load that old hussy up and take her back to the sale barn and resell her and let somebody else worry about her. Pretty soon she'll end up in the packing plant, and that's where she belonged in the first place. Don't tolerate troublemakers. Well, now, somebody that's unfaithful isn't necessarily a troublemaker if you don't have to depend on them. There, I've got to my point. Always take the unfaithful and those, if you must feel from your Christian heart that you must support them, put them to digging ditches or cleaning out the john, okay? That's where they belong. I know that may offend some, That's very biblical, all right? And if you want to, well, why would you say something like that? Be faithful. And you don't fall in that category. Grow up, mature. Be dependable. If you give your word, you stick with it. If you say, I will be here and I will do this for you or that for you or whatever it might be for the man, company, or family or organization or whatever the situation, be faithful. It's important. And my dear friends, if you were ever faithful to be anyone, be faithful to little children. Don't be one of these parents that looks over your shoulder, well, Daddy, I want to do this and I want to do, not paying any attention to that child, and they mess around and they promise something to the child, and the child is elated and just really counts on it and looks forward to it. Don't be unfaithful to them if you promised. Unless there's some danger involved or something of that nature, you keep your word. The easiest way to spoil a child is to disappoint him in his parents. Verse 20. I wish some of us were perfect. We're not. Even doing our best, we fall short. Verse 20. As he that taketh away a garment in cold weather, and as vinegar unto nitre, that's soda, all right, like baking soda to you. It's what we call soda today, like in your toothpaste, soda is added. Well, that's what nitre is, or some people call it nitre, whichever the case. So is he that singeth songs to an heavy heart. Now there is a beautiful piece of work. That is really a beautiful proverb. And it's kind of written, no doubt, by the king with a little tongue in cheek. Because if you were truly one that did these things, you would brand yourself a fool. And if you can't see through it, then you need to examine yourself. How many of you take your coat off in the freezing sub-temperatures? You don't? I don't either. If anything, I put on a heavier coat. And what about one that pours vinegar on soda? Do you know what happens when you... Hey, if you want an example of what this little proverb means, next time you go to the kitchen, be careful and note what you're doing. Put a little soda in the bottom of a cup or a bowl so you don't make a mess. You're in the sink. And pour a little vinegar on top of it and see what happens. Just a little bit. You don't have to be wasteful. And see what happens, and then you'll better understand how that this proverb speaks of a fool. Because you not only ruined the soda, but you also ruined the vinegar. And for those of you that don't know what happens, it just simply fizzes up and just really, you've got action there, all right? It won't harm you, but you got action. But it ruins both. They're worthless. And how many, when someone has a very sad heart, maybe a trauma in his family, has some joker going in and telling happy, uplifting songs and instead of songs that might be good for the memory or something of that nature. No, that would be in very bad taste. And you know that. If a friend cries, you cry with them. By that I mean you have the countenance of his sorrow. You don't go in there all happy because he's crying. I'm talking about heavy stuff here, such as the loss of a loved one or something of that nature. You sympathize. Otherwise, only a fool goes in being a clown when someone is really hurting. You sympathize and show your love for them and your understanding. So what do we got with all this put together? If you've got a joker that takes his coat or clothes off in the cold wintertime, or that takes soda and pours vinegar on it, or goes into a home that is in grief and starts being a joker, playing tricks on people and so forth, you got a fool. And Solomon wants you to see a genuine fool. I don't apologize for spending that much time on that, but it is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work to test the mind of a person. And when you come across a parable or something in God's Word that says, as he that taketh away a garment in cold weather takes off his coat in cold weather, you don't do that. A fool would. And as vinegar up on soda, I'll say, blows it up, wastes it. Doesn't actually blow it up, it wastes it as long as it's not confined. So is he that singeth songs to an heavy heart, all right? Happy songs, okay? Verse 21, to continue. That's kind of a self-contained little proverb that a wise person can almost chuckle when he reads it. It's a beautiful piece of work. 21. If thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat. And if he be thirsty, give him water to drink. Now there's something here. There are about 2 or 3, maybe more words from the Hebrew that are translated into only one English word, and that's enemy. And if you're not familiar with the manuscripts, you're not going to know what value to affix to this. Let's say that you have a killing army approaching your house, and they're hungry, and you're going to feed them before they murder you? I don't think so. Then that would make God's word seem a little foolish, would it not? Well, it certainly would if you were not wise. Or give him a drink of water just before he blows your head off? You know, what is God talking about here? Well, in the first place, the word enemy is not foe. That means it's not someone that's trying to blow you away or do you harm. The word probably would best translate, rather than enemy, hateful person, because the Hebrew word is simply hate. Now, a hateful person, I get many letters of saying, what do I do to a person that I work with that is just absolutely a hateful person? Snow him under with kindness. Give him a drink of water. Make him, and it actually heaps coals upon his head. Well, let's see. I think we need to go one more verse to catch it. For, when you do this, for thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall reward you. Now, that's the important part. If you reverence God, and you've got a hateful person, not an enemy really, as we think of an enemy in many aspects. This is just a hateful person you work with. How do you control him? Snow him under with kindness. It heaps coals of fire upon them, and God will reward you many times by getting rid of that one or straightening them up that makes them so ashamed. If you have the nerve to show them a kindness when they've been hateful to you, it's embarrassing. Verse 23, we're going to finish this chapter real quickly here. The north wind driveth away rain, so doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue, an angry continuance, and a backbiting tongue. Now, a countenance and backbiting tongue, but wait a minute. That doesn't work. So we know we got something wrong. And if you're familiar with the Hebrew, driveth away and bring forth is the same Hebrew word. It's the subject that is connected to that determines the value of which translation should take place. And a naturalist, or anyone that knows nature in this area, the north or northwest wind always brings rain. So in the first place, it should be translated brings forth. The north wind brings forth rain. That means it finishes up the crop. It's good for you. So doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue. It brings forth anyone that is angry within. anybody that is just burning up with anger, it's going to produce a backbiting tongue, the same as a northwest wind or north wind in this area will bring forth rain. So there we have to do just a little bit of correcting. You can check it out in your Strongs. It can mean both things. This way, this old boy must have been a desk jockey that translated this, and I'm not making light of the translators. King James had many of them, and they wrote you a letter in the original King James warning you of this. Verse 24, it is better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than with a brawling woman and in a wide house. That is to say, have a mansion with a brawling woman, it's better just to have a little place somewhere in the corner. That works also with men. It's a lot better for a woman to live in a much smaller place, somewhere out of sight or away from a brawling man. Who wants to waste their time? 25. As cold waters to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. And so it is. Again, that icy drink at harvest time, forementioned, good news will do the same thing from a far country. 26. A righteous man falling down before the wicked is as a troubled fountain and a corrupt spring. And it's amazing that Solomon would, just after mentioning an ice drink, would bring forth a fountain or a corrupt spring. If the enemy brings down a righteous man, it hurts the whole community, all right? And I don't know how many of you have ever been where a fountain or a spring is, if somebody troubles it and fouls the water. Like if you're coming, you've walked 10 miles to get to this spring and you're going to check off there, and somebody just rode a pack of horses through it, and there's horse apples and everything else all through the spring. It's spoiled, all right? I'm just telling you like it is, friend, okay? Or a sow will always muddy the water, okay? And you drink after that? I think not. It messes it up. Well, it's just as, and I must do this so that you catch the analogy of how bad it is for the community to have a righteous person go down. But always know this one thing. If he has God's blessings, he'll go down 7 times and he'll still get right back up. And your community will do just fine. So don't be depressed and make the situation worse. 27. It is not good to eat much honey. Well, I think I made that pretty clear why in the verse 16, right? So for men to search their own glory is not glory. Now this is really sawed up in the translation. I want you to note that is not is in italics and it has been added. So to properly translate, so for men to search their own glory is not glory, should read, the pursuit of what is difficult to one is honor. The word in the Hebrew, it is something very difficult to search for it. It brings you honor. If you work at it the hard way, it will always bring you that glory. That's the meaning of the proverb. To complete the chapter, verse 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit, that's to say his self-control. I suppose if I were to give a subtitle to this chapter 25, it would be self-control. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Why? Because so is the man. The man is broken down and has no defense whatsoever. In case you didn't know it, that's what walls were for at the time of this writing, was for protection and to keep wild animals, whatever could be difficult, that it had to come through the gate for inspection. But if you don't practice self-control, you lose many of your defenses. Let's say you're hooked on drugs. What kind of a protective wall do you have if you're all strung out? And allow me just a minute for those that indulge. Let's say you're all strung out, but you really want to serve God. It's been hours since you've had a hit, all right? But you got the bug, all right? You have that old habit. Well, Satan comes along when you really want to witness against him. and he gives you a hit in one form or the other, whatever your poison, and I think that's befitting as well. And your wall of defense is torn down, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to reach out and take the poison because you need a hit so bad you got the shakes. Okay? So self-control, discipline, stay focused on God's word, pray for the power and the strength to do that, and you'll be a lot better person. Self-control brings blessings of God. All right, bless your heart, you listen. Our Father truly loves you.